Seahawks Week 2 matchup. And normally we do these pregame reports, Evan, and we're sitting here and we're telling you about inactives. And the list comes out, and James White is a surprise inactive, and it didn't really make any sense. And then soon after that, we heard what is just terrible news that James White's father was killed in a car crash. And his mother is in critical condition. And this is just a real gut punch here for the Patriots, I'm sure, trying to figure out how to respond to this. And it's just really heavy atmosphere in a week where already you had Bill Belichick's mother passing away. And this is just, just terrible. And we don't know the condition of his mother as well, as in critical condition. And this is just a rough one for the Pats. I mean, I'll just get your thoughts on this and just how they're going to kind of deal with this moment right now, because this happened apparently today.
Right, happened right this morning. And, listen, it's been a tough week already inside the building. And I think that a lot of players, coaches, people outside the organization, obviously reaching out to the Belichick family about his mother's passing. The team traveled in those cut-off gray hoodies on purpose as sort of a signal to their head coach and kind of an ode to their head coach. And now we get this news this morning. And you just kind of – obviously everything that's going on in the world right now puts a lot of things in perspective. But when this type of stuff happens, you just kind of wonder, how does the team rally? How do they go out there and play tonight? How do they kind of muster up, that sort of energy and that ability to kind of focus in on the game and at the task at hand? So I think that it's, a classic Belichick thing to kind of use this as a rallying point and get everybody to sort of come together on these sort of tragedies. But it's going to be really interesting to me to see right away, beginning of the game, first quarter, first couple of drives, how this team looks and if they look a little bit shook by all this.
Yeah, news. And I mean, of course, Belichick is the rock here, and the guy who's been here, forever. Right. And so obviously, and you have members of the Belichick family on the staff, as you pointed out, and White is just such a core member of this team, and somebody who's so respected and beloved, and that everybody's going to have their thoughts with White right now, and the focus, I would imagine, is going to be really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's a team captain, and he's one of those guys that leads more by example than necessarily by the big rah-rah speeches or anything like that. But he's just a consummate Patriot, dependable, smart, tough. That's what all the coaches say to us when they describe, what do we look for in players? And obviously James White describes all three of those things. And not to make this about football, but just quickly looking at the schematics and the game plan going in, my guess is that James White was a major part of this game plan with the cover 3 defense in Seattle. We've seen what guys like Shane Vereen or White himself did against Atlanta in Super Bowl 51, Vereen obviously in Super Bowl 49. This is the type of defense when you go up against that, the running back in the flat against the linebacker, time and time again is going to be an opening that they can attack. So my guess is they were going into this game planning on James White to touch the ball 10, 15, something like that times, be targeted a ton in the passing game. They obviously have Rex Burkhead. They have J.J. Taylor who can catch the ball out of the backfield too, but they're going to have to reinvent the game plan here on the fly.
Yeah, and that's, again, shifting gears to football here. The game's being played, and this is certainly going to impact the team because, as you mentioned, this was going to be a game where a game script seemed to really favor White here for sure. Looking at the rest of the game, let's quickly go over inactives here that we have. Stidham, Keene, Uche again. White was the big surprise, and then obviously we heard the news. Nothing else here that you're stunned by. And again, at some point you want to see the rookies get out there and see what they can do. So again, it is, I'm not going to say disappointing, but you do want them to get to the point where they can play their way on the field because, you're looking for more playmakers, and certainly both of them were billed as playmakers on both sides of the ball. So what's it going to take to get one of those guys, into the rotation, so to speak?
Well, I think for both Uche and Keane, it's all about injuries, right? Because it's not just the fact that maybe was ruled out before the game, so we knew that
Yep.
he was going to be inactive with the ankle. So it's not necessarily about the severity of the injuries in Uche's case or Keane's case. It's actually more just about him being able to be
Yep.
available during the week to get the reps
Right.
that you need to play in the game. So a guy like Dalton Keane, especially, has had that neck injury that sort of lingered since the end of camp, and he hasn't been able to practice. He has been limited in practice. He was a full participant in practice this week, just the first time in a
Just
couple
for
of
once.
weeks that
Yep.
he's been a complete full participant. So that's I think the biggest thing is that now not only do you have to make sure that they're physically healthy enough to play in the game, but then more so I think it's looking forward of how much practice time have they been able to study up, have they been able to learn in a short period of time to be able to cram it in. The other thing that I would say is just that for the second week in a row, not that it's that major of a surprise I think at this point, but Brian Hoyer QB2, Jared Stidham QB3 looks pretty solid right now. I think the biggest difference is obviously that Hoyer is kind of a quarterback's coach on the sideline a little bit as much as he is a backup, but it's very interesting to me to see that last year they put Stidham over Hoyer to back up Brady. This year they're picking Hoyer over Stidham to back up Cam.
And they're bringing in really tall guys and trying them out at quarterback. So, you're
Right.
Stidham can't be buried any further on the depth chart at this point.
Exactly.
So looking ahead to the game itself, the Seahawks will pose a much more, a much larger challenge on offense for sure than the Miami Dolphins did, and they're playing a more aggressive style. Wilson, had a tremendous game last week. His playmaking ability, they've struggled in the past. This. With mobile type quarterbacks, but I mean he's got some weapons here. They have a solid run game. What do you think the Patriots are going to do here? Try to make this a Chris Carson game, take the receivers away,
Yeah.
and then
I think this is like a cat and mouse game to me with Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick. Pete Carroll, earlier on in the week, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, a lot of reporters asking him in Seattle, is this 65% of the time throwing here to stay? Are you going to just lean on Russell Wilson, let him throw the ball 35, 40 times a game?
or are you going to run it at the goal line?
Or are you going to go back to your old school way of thinking, Pete Carroll, and run the football all the time? I think specifically on first and second down, they became really pass happy in the first week of the season, against Atlanta. On first and second down, they passed with the second most frequency in the league out of anybody in week one. So that's a complete sort of 180 from the normal Pete Carroll formula of let's establish the run, let's run the ball early, let's get, first and 10 becomes second and 5. That's always been the Pete Carroll sort of way in Seattle. So I think Belichick, in a way, get back to the point, is he's sort of kind of baiting Pete. We have a thin front seven, we're light in the front seven, we play a lot of safeties in the box on the field at once. Run the football on us, right? That we're begging you to run the football on us, and I think that's actually what Bill Belichick wants them to do. And if they end up kind of conceding and running the football like they are asking, then I think that they're going to not score as many points as they probably would if they threw it. As much as it's a strength-on-strength matchup with that secondary, I truly believe that if Seattle continues to pound the rock, that they're playing right in the Patriots' hands.
Offensively, and that's definitely one of those. And you've seen them do that in the past. I remember
it's always Peyton. Peyton was always the guy
game where he had the 200 plus yards.
Yeah, right. And now it's sort of becoming, I think, a philosophy almost for Belichick on defense, is that he's just going to play light boxes or light guys in the box, I should
go ahead,
say.
Run it. Take your 4 or 5 yards. Yeah.
Right. Just run it every single time if you feel like it. You'll take your 5 yards in a cloud of dust any day of the week over a 30-yard
Where they get
pass.
burned on that is when those 4 and 5 yards turn into 7, 8, and 9 yards. And when that happens, then they have to adjust here. So again, you can do that, but you got to make sure that they're nibbling and not taking huge chunks there in that run game. On the other side, Newton, extremely conservative in week 1, 15 of 19.
I don't know if you can still hear me. I lost you, John, but if you guys can still hear me, I'll keep going. I think I knew where he was going with that one, which was Cam Newton. Basically, is he going to run the ball still, or is he going to, are they going to let him air it out a little bit more? I think the interesting thing here is that in a way, it's kind of the same thing as on the other side of the ball as with Seattle. I think they want to play a lot more base defense, big nickel defense, certainly with, thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. I think it's a John issue right now, but we're going to keep rolling. With the Seattle, they want to play that big nickel with Jamal Adams in the box. They want to play that 4-3 defense, just base defense, which is really kind of gone by the wayside in today's NFL. So I think that this Seattle team is kind of inviting the Patriots to throw the football. They're definitely weaker in the secondary than they are in the front seven. I think that's what they want to continue to do. But at the same time, I feel like I think that there's a chance that the Patriots are just going to keep running the football down everybody's throats. But I think they're going to run the ball differently this week, compared to last week. And that is, this is a penetrating front. This is a very aggressive defensive unit that Seattle has. Jamal Adams, Bobby Wagner, all these guys want to make splash plays behind the line of scrimmage. So I would expect a lot more zone runs, trying to stretch this defense out, get those guys vertically up the field and wash them down and catch them by misdirection, cutbacks, things like that, instead of those power runs where you're really trying to fold the defense and get two gappers out of those plugging holes and move them out of the holes. Now I think we're going to do a little bit more of, let you be aggressive, get up the field, zone runs to the outside, and then those cutback lanes will open
Evan,
up.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes, I got you now.
I think I just kicked out a cord. So we talked about that. And again, just what do you want to see here? And again, we spent a lot of time on N'Keal, and
yes,
and rightfully so, because I mean, you need him to be in this offense. You need him to be more. And
so yeah, N'Keal, I think I can answer this one too without hearing the end of the question. I think the biggest thing with N'Keal is that we are seeing the flashes of the physical tools for him, right? We're seeing the ability to win on contested catches, to use his size, to box out at the catch point, to use his physicality at times, right? We see all these things out in N'Keal. But then we see the rookie mistakes, right? The fumble at the goal line, then, not getting his pads down on the little swing screen that they threw him, which probably should have gone for a touchdown or at least a very big play. He gets tackled by Jamal Perry, who's, 180, 175, about my size, and he's bringing down a 6'3" guy. That's not exactly what you want to see. So you want to have him just clean up those little mistakes, but also at the same time in that first week, I can't help but feeling like he could have broken out last week. He could have had a huge game. He could have had at least one touchdown. Then I mentioned the screen pass. I think that could have gone for a long gainer as well. All of a sudden, you add those plays back in, and now you're looking at an 80, 90, 100-yard day with a touchdown on the board, with 6 and 7 catches, something like that. It's just such a different narrative from what it ended up being. So I think we're on the precipice of N'Keal having that big kind of jump and that big breakout. We're just sort of waiting for it to happen.
And everyone would breathe such a huge sigh of relief just to see it once, and you want to see him run free. You want to see him break tackles. You want to see him do stuff after the catch, him getting in space, anything that you can do just for playmaking. Again, they didn't do it last game, but sometimes running him on a sweep or a reverse or something like that, just to get him moving a little bit, I don't think would be the worst thing. And try something a little bit different. Any other thoughts on this game heading into it? And again, as we said, the game script, and anybody here joining us late, the news today, the terrible news we found out prior to the game is that James White's father and mother were both involved in a car crash, and his father was killed, and his mother is in critical condition. James White obviously is inactive. It's a very tough situation for the Patriots right now. But on the field again, the Patriots are going to go into this one shorthanded. Any other thoughts heading into this game?
Well, I think that, at the end of the day, this game is ultimately going to come down to how the Patriots defense does containing Russell Wilson. And he's one of those players, specifically when you're pass rushing him, that you can't chase him around. You got to contain him. You can't chase him like a chicken and try, because he will kill you that way. He'll run around for days. He'll get free. He'll slip out of tackles. He's got eyes in the back of his head to spin out of tackles and spin out of pressure. And then he'll hit you with a 50-yard bomb on the move going down the field to DK Metcalf. So that's exactly what you need to prevent from happening on the defense side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, I'm really fascinated to see what they do. No White now, who is that underneath the defense of a cover 3 weak side linebacker versus running back coming out of the backfield? Who's going to get that matchup, and can Burkhead or can JJ Taylor matchup as consistently as we know James White would have? Maybe this kind of put them in a position where they have to get a little bit more creative with how they're using a N'Keal Harry or how they're using some of their other pass catchers, lining a Julian Edelman up in the backfield, lining a N'Keal Harry up in the backfield to get that matchup, because they're not going to have an automatic chains mover with James White out.
Do you think they have it? Do they have the juice here if they were to fall and the Seahawks really get out in front here? And again, you're hoping that the secondary can keep those guys in check and you keep it a close game. That way you can play the brand of offense that you want to play. But what happens in a shootout? What happens if you're trailing by 2 touchdowns?
I think the Patriots need to do everything that they can to avoid a shootout with Russell Wilson. Because not only is he, everybody knows I love Cam, but not only is he a better passer than Cam right now, but he's also got better receivers down the field than Cam does with Lockett and DK Metcalf. So right now, the Patriots formula is exactly how they beat Miami in week 1. Run the ball 40 times, play good defense, turn the ball over on defense, give it back to the offense, go on these long sustained drives, and then punch it in, obviously, on the goal line. That's going to have to be sort of the formula moving forward for this team, because they're not going to get into any shootouts with Seattle or Kansas City or any of these teams that really at the top of the AFC or NFC and win many games that way. So they got to play from in front. They got to play a ball control possession type of game on offense. But I am interested to see if the Patriots do let Cam throw it a little bit more down the field this week, just because this secondary is definitely on paper weaker than what they went up against in Miami with Xavier Howard and Byron Jones and all those guys that they have down there in South Florida. So I think that there is a difference in the personnel, that they could pick on a Shaq Griffin, they could pick on a Quentin Dunbar, they can pick on some of these guys in the Seattle secondary, which maybe they were a little bit more afraid to go down the field against Miami.
How do you think they match up with the receivers? Do you think Gilmore is on Metcalf?
That's an interesting question, because Lockett is about 70% out of the slot.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want Gilmore really inside all that often, and you can put Jonathan Jones on Lockett, maybe with some safety help.
With some help, right.
And that's kind of what they do against Tyreek Hill is what I've been sort of guessing all week is what they're going to do to Lockett. With Metcalf, I think the interesting part about him is that he's definitely the second best threat on this offense, or maybe even the most explosive guy for sure. So in that respect, you want to put Gilmore on him, but he also doesn't move very much around because he's still a young player kind of learning the NFL game. So they basically send him out left to Russell Wilson pretty much on every single snap. And he goes left, right a little bit, but it's not a ton of movement around the formation. So the Patriots on the outside, I would not be surprised if they just play sides, which whoever comes up with.
That's what I was wondering, because JC seems to be able to match up there too. So the physicality of Metcalf and Right.
So JC, if it's, I don't think Dorsett's playing tonight, but if it's Metcalf running out towards you, you got Metcalf, vice versa. David Moore goes to the other side, and that would be Gilmore's responsibility. I don't know if this is a game necessarily where they have Gilmore travel with one specific player, but then it could all be different if Belichick has a ton of respect for DK Metcalf. Which
that's the thing is you're almost neutralizing Gilmore if you're not having him follow him around there. So I wonder whether he does.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one because, like I said, Metcalf he's go ball, come back, slant. Go ball, come back, slant on repeat over and over again. Watching the coach's film from week 1, he must have ran 10 to 15 go routes.
And then he hit one.
Right, and that's what they were waiting for.
And he hit one. Release, he had a quiet game and he hit one.
Release, go route, and eventually you hit one in the third quarter, and that's what you're looking for. As long as he hits one, then he's had a good game, right? So I think that's the interesting thing is that putting a guy like Gilmore, who's such a technician and such a smart football player, on a guy that's really going to only run 3 routes the entire game is it's tricky. It's a tricky matchup, but he's definitely the most explosive player on this Seahawks offense, and avoiding giving up that one big play is going to be huge for the Packers.
How does he compare to other guys who've given Gilmore trouble? And there aren't very many of them, but
I would say he's different from like a guy like a Devontae Parker, for example, because Parker's so good at the catch point. He's so good at going above the rim and bringing in those contested catches.
Which is what he did late last season over and over again. He just went up and got it.
I mean, that's what he did basically for 5 of his 7 catches against Gilmore were just high point fades where he just jumped him at a catch point, and Gilmore kind of, his timing was off a little bit, and he kind of got mossed there.
Right.
In terms of DK, he's more of the explosive straight line guy that's just going to be a blur right by you and just burst right by you. So I think that the difference with him, and I kind of wonder, what do you might want to actually play off of him a little bit and not press him up, because he's so big that if you get in his face, then he's going to be able to body you at the line of scrimmage, and then he's going to be down the field real fast. So if you play off of him a little bit and only just respect his speed, dare him to go underneath you, dare him to run that slant, dare him to run that in-cutting route. I don't think that he's going to have the route running skill at the top. Whereas if Gilmore is playing off, he sees him break it, I think he's going to be able to jump that a lot, here tonight, and maybe even jump it into a pick.
Yep. So everyone at home wondering whether to play DK Metcalf right here. He might get Gilmore. He might not.
I know it's tough.
But I doubt you have much left on your bench at this point. If you hit the Sunday night game and you still got Metcalf, chances are you're playing him. So if you are, you're hoping for that big pop off, because I don't think he's going to get a ton of action tonight with the Patriots cornerbacks kind of swarming all over the place. It's not going to be a high volume target guy. Okay, final predictions, Evan, before we sign off.
Sure. I picked the Seahawks earlier in the week on Friday with Sierra. I think I'm sticking with Seattle. I just think that there's been a lot going on the last couple of days for the Patriots, not only the off-field stuff with James White and Bill Belichick and the whole Belichick family, but also the travel involvement of this as being the first road game in the COVID era for them, and having to figure out the logistics of all of that is another headache. Right. And it's, obviously having your own planes helps a little bit, but it's still a headache, right, in itself. So no fans in the stands either. I think a lot of people assume that leans Patriots because they're not dealing with the 12s, but I think it also is an issue of mustering up that energy. Week 1, it's easy, right? That's the opening week of the season. It's kind of easy to get yourself jazzed up. Now in week 2, that's the real test. Can you still be that same energetic team that came out quick against Miami? Right. There's no energy in the building really, and after this news about James White, it's gonna be really interesting to see, like I said off the top, how they play on those first couple of drives. Yep.
We'll see how that goes. So again, kickoff 8:20. We'll be here after the game, along with Taylor Kyles, who's going to join us for post game, and so right after the game, right back here on all CLNS streaming platforms, we'll break down the game, break down all the action. Follow Evan Lazar on Twitter all game for all of his updates. And we'll, as I said, have you covered. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's where we can get all of our Patriots videos with Evan and Sierra, a lot of our post-game content, all the interviews, all the analysis. So again, we will see you all after the game. Thanks.